All right, tonight we began in chapter 7, the book of Hebrews. And as we began this chapter, call your attention again to the fact that back in chapter 5 and in verse 10, we are introduced to the idea that Jesus is made a priest after the order of Melchizedek. Actually, we're introduced to it previous to that in verse 6. But in verse 10, he really gets then to start talking about it. At that time, then, starting with chapter 5, verse 11, all the way through chapter 6, there is what is called a parenthesis. And that is that the writer stops and exhorts the people to be more diligent in their study, because he said when it comes to the priesthood of Christ after the order of Melchizedek, there are many things in there that are hard to be understood. Then in chapter 7, verse 1, he gets back on that idea then, the subject of Christ after the order, a priest after the order of Melchizedek. So that's where we began tonight. Now, in the first 10 verses, it is fairly simple. We could spend an hour or two asking a lot of questions that nobody could possibly answer. But when we get to it, I'll point out here the thing that a lot of discussion is over. But I think that there's no problem in it whatsoever. All right, now as he starts out, we're going to go pretty rapidly here. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of God Most High. Now before we go any farther, the thing that we need to note about Melchizedek is that here he is a king and a priest at the same time. Now this is something that a Leviticus that couldn't happen under the old law. You couldn't be a king and a priest. The king came from Judah, the priest came from Levi, but Melchizedek lived in the time of Abraham before the Old Testament law was given, and so he was a priest and a king at the same time. Now he was king of Salem. It is generally thought that the town Salem is what is called Jerusalem. That is, it is what we call Jerusalem today. And nobody knows for sure, but that is the conception of most people. All right, so now this Melchizedek then, who was a priest and a king at the same time, he was a priest of God Most High, who met Abraham from the slaughter of the kings and blessed him. Now Abraham had gone out to rescue his family. He had done this. He had captured these kings. He had taken the spoils from these kings. And when he came back, he met Melchizedek. Melchizedek just came on the scene, and there he is as Abraham came back. And Abraham did a very unique thing. It said that, they both did. That is, Melchizedek blessed Abraham, and then Abraham divided a 10th part of everything that he got down there, he gave Melchizedek a 10th part of. And it says, being first by interpretation, king of Salem, and then, or king of righteousness, and then also king of Salem, which is king of peace. Now, the word king Salem would mean peace. And so this king, he says, his name is interpreted as a king of righteousness and a king of peace. He ruled in that way. He was a good king. Now, the important thing to remember in here, though, is this, that Melchizedek was a king and a priest at the same time, and that Melchizedek blessed Abraham. Now, that's going to become an important thing in just a moment. Not only did he bless Abraham, but Abraham paid tithes to him. Now, before we go any farther, stop to think about this. Suppose that I meet you on the road tomorrow and you have just gotten a great big bonus. You've gotten a $10,000 bonus. Would it enter your mind to give me a tenth? I mean, even enter your mind, it would mine, but yours. See? No, it wouldn't enter your mind at all. If I said, how about you paying me a tithe? What would you say? You'd probably ask a stupid question. Why? Right? You see, in other words, why do you deserve it? Like this. Now, keep that in mind for just a moment, because Abraham paid those tithes. He didn't ask the question that you would ask about me. All right? Now, it tells us another thing then about this man. It said he was without father, without mother, without genealogy, having neither beginning of days nor end of life, but made like unto the Son of God, abideth a priest continually. So now, here then we have this individual that is given all of these attributes here. That he's this king up here, righteous, king of there. I didn't put priest, I should have put priest up in here. He's without father and without mother. Now here's where a lot of speculation goes on. You can just speculate on and 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 say, does that mean he didn't have a dad and mom? No, he had a dad and mom. He was just a man. He had a dad and mom. Who were they? I don't know. That's the point that the Bible makes. The point that it is making is that just like in the book of Galatians, you remember we had that analogy in there of Abraham married 2 wives and had a child of promise and a child of the flesh and so forth. And then you can use that as an analogy over the New Testament. All right, now God then has the same thing to happen to Melchizedek. Here is a man who is a great man. He is a king and a priest. And he, it says, without father and without mother. Now that's just a way that the people used to say in those days. We don't have a record of them. There are other passages or other statements made in secular literature that talks about an individual that he had a father but no mother. And what that means is we know who his father was, but we don't know who his mother was. And without father and without mother means we don't have any record of him having any father or mother. Well, what family did he come from? Where were his grandpa and his grandmother and so forth? We don't have any record of his genealogy. Well, when did the individual die? We don't have any record of him dying. See? Okay, what do we have a record of Melchizedek? Tell me what you know about Melchizedek. Forget what you don't know. Tell me what you know about Melchizedek.
He was a king and a priest.
He was a king and a high priest. He was there. As far as you know, that you don't know when he had a beginning, you don't know when he had an ending, you know he was there. All right, now that's the way that it's going to be with the high priest of Jesus Christ. It's going to be one of an eternal nature, is the point that he's going to make on this case here. That the Son of God is one who didn't have a beginning, he will have no ending, and he is going to abide a priest forever. And so it will be like the priesthood of Melchizedek, having no record of that. Now, the next thing that he says is, verse 4, now consider how great this man was. So we're going to talk about how great Melchizedek was. Unto whom Abraham the patriarch, now Abraham was a great man, he was a patriarch. That word means the father rules. He was the father of the whole family. He gave a tenth out of the chief spoils. And they indeed of the sons of Levi that receiveth the priest office have commandment to take tithes to the people according to the law, that is, of their brethren. Though these have come out of the loins of Abraham. Now, his point is this, and that is that as you start out here, we're going to see that Christ here is going to be the real thing. He's going to be the real high priest. Now, Melchizedek was a type of Christ. So from here on down, we have a lesson that can be given. Up here is Christ, who is a priest. Melchizedek was a type. We have no record of beginning and ending. He was a king and a priest at the same time. And Abraham paid tithes unto him. All right, now Abraham was the father of the whole nation. He was the patriarch of the whole nation. Now, as you move on down, under Abraham begat children, and you come down now to Levi, and there you have the Levitical priesthood. All right, the Levites gathered tithes from whom? Who did they get their tithes from?
People.
From the common people. See, as you start out down here, from the very common people. As you start out here, the common people paid tithes under the priesthood. The priesthood was under Abraham, and Abraham paid tithes to Melchizedek. It's showing the lesser pays tithes to the greater. There's no question, as I mentioned a moment ago, that Abraham offered him a tithe. Now, why would he offer the tithe? See, why would he offer 10%? It is because of some very special reason. He understood Melchizedek held an office that was greater than what he held. See, Melchizedek was a king and a priest at the same time. Mm-hmm.
I have a little bit of confusion here. When Abraham lived, the 10 tribes didn't exist, right?
No.
Okay. Okay, now my understanding of the history is not real clear. So how did Abraham get the command to, first of all, offer a tithe? If they're between the common people and the tribe of Levi didn't even exist, did it?
At the time Abraham paid tithes, Levi didn't exist. See, Levi didn't exist until hundreds of years later.
Okay.
But Levi comes from Abraham.
Oh, I see what you're saying. That's going...
Yeah, that's all we're saying. See, Levi comes from Abraham.
Okay.
Abraham is the father of the nation, which means he's the greatest that there is in this of the Jewish nation. Mm-hmm. Now, when Abraham lived, Melchizedek was greater than Abraham. And so all this is showing is how great Melchizedek really is.
Okay, just looking from Abraham to Melchizedek, then is there someplace in the Old Testament where Abraham was commanded to tithe?
No.
You just take it as an inference.
The only thing we have is that he went over here, he captured this, he came back, he met Melchizedek, and he gave him tithes. Who pays taxes? Does a state pay taxes to you, or do you pay taxes to the state, and why? The lesser pays taxes to the greater.
Okay, but a tithe is not a tax, right?
No, but it is in a sense. It's not a tax, but it is a gift, and all tithe means is 10%. It just means he gave him 10%. That's all it means. When he came back, he saw this man, and this man was so great that he recognized his greatness, and he gave him 10% of everything that he had. And it doesn't tell that God commanded him to do it. It just, there he was, he saw him, he did it, which shows how great Melchizedek is. And that's the only thing that's trying to show, just how great Melchizedek is.
There's one feature about this. You always have to remember that during Abraham's day, he was a sojourner, or a man that came out of a country, went to another country, but he was always moving around.
Right.
Melchizedek was established wherever his kingship was, his kingdom. And word about him obviously would have got around the countryside. Abraham would be no stranger to him, or he wouldn't be a stranger to Abraham.
Right.
But the Bible just doesn't tell us.
Right.
Not getting into that end of it, because there's no purpose in it. The purpose was just to show the relationship that existed there.
That's right. All it is just show relationship. Now let's go one step farther in here. In verse 6, but he whose genealogy is not counted from them. Now who would that be? From the Jewish people, but whose genealogy is not counted from the Jewish people? Melchizedek. All right, but he whose genealogy is not counted, Melchizedek, from them that taketh tithes of Abraham, and hath blessed him that hath the promises. Now, Abraham was a great man. He had the promises. But Melchizedek blessed him. Now notice the next. But without any dispute, the less is blessed of the better. See, so when a blessing comes, it is from the greater to the lesser. That's the way that a blessing goes. Never does it turn around the other way. Who leaves an inheritance or a blessing to people? Is it the grandchildren leaves it to the grandparents, or the grandparents leave it to the grandchildren? And in all the blessings that you find throughout the Old Testament, who was it that blessed whom? Was it the dad getting ready to die blessed his children, or was it the other way around? And so there's no question about this, that the greater always blesses the lesser. All right, when they met, Melchizedek blessed him, and Abraham paid tithes, which shows Melchizedek was greater than Abraham. It said, and here on this earth, men that receive tithes, and here men that die receive tithes, but there one of whom it is witnessed that he liveth. Now here's another thing. Down here, as we take tithes from these people down here, they all die. What do you know about Melchizedek?
No record.
He just lives. That's all that you know. See, that's the point that it's getting at. Now 9, and so to say, through Abraham, even Levi, who receiveth tithes, that is from the Jews, hath paid tithes, for he was yet in the loins of his father when Abraham met him. And so as you get down here into the Levitical priesthood, this priesthood who received tithes, they in essence paid tithes to Melchizedek because they are the offsprings of Abraham, and so they paid tithes through Abraham. Certainly, you're no greater than your father. See, in doing that. It would be kind of like if George Washington, I guess, had done something to the Queen of England. Perhaps he had bowed down and said, you are greater than we. Well, then that would always have gone down in history, would it not? That the Queen of England was greater than the father of our country, and all of us would have to go ahead and accept that fact, you see, as we go through. So, while you're in the loins now. All right. Now, these first 10 verses then are given merely to show and introduce us to Melchizedek and show us how great Melchizedek really was, because Christ is going to become a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. So now keep in mind this then, that what we learn here is we're going to see Christ as a real thing. Melchizedek is a type. Melchizedek was greater than everything that has to do with the Jewish priesthood, the Levitical priesthood. All right, now we start in verse 11, and now he's going to talk about the Levitical priesthood. By the way, what's the book of Hebrews about? What is it we're dealing? What's that?
Not to drift back, but the news better than the later.
Okay, don't drift back. Don't go back into the old covenant, because the new is better than the old. So now then we're going to see that the priesthood of the new is far superior to the old. So don't go back to the old. Go back to that Levitical priesthood, because you're going back to an inferior system. All right, now he says this in verse 11. Now, if there was perfection through the Levitical priesthood, and then there's your parenthesis, for under it hath the people received the law. I want us to stop right there and note this. Is there any way that he associates the law and the priesthood at that time? Yes. Now, under the Levitical priesthood, the people received the law. See, the law came under the Levitical priesthood. God called Moses and Aaron. He gave gave Moses the law, but what did he give Aaron? The priesthood. So the law came to be controlled by the Levitical priesthood, is the point that he's making here. Now he said, if there was perfection through the Levitical priesthood, what further need was there that another priest should arise after the order of Melchizedek and not be reckoned after the order of Aaron? Is everybody clear on Aaron and Levi as he bounces back and forth in here? Aaron was the brother of Moses, and he was the first high priest that ever lived. See, God called Aaron, you're going to be the high priest. Now then, out of from Aaron, God then chose Levi. And Levi, the tribe of Levi then, was to function as priest after that. So the Aaronic priesthood or the Levitical priesthood is talking about exactly the same priesthood. All right, now the whole point is this. Now, if there was perfection back here, this would have been useless. Suppose that this back here could accomplish the will of God. It could have saved man. It would have been perfect. All right, you move over here, and this one is perfect. There's no doubt. We know it is. Christ is perfect, and this is perfect. Now, if this over here were perfect, what need was there to take this perfect thing out of the way and put this perfect in? There would be no need whatsoever, wouldn't there? See, it would be a useless thing. It would be like I go down and I buy a new Cadillac. I drive it out, and suppose that there's something wrong with the Cadillac. Would I be justified in going back and getting another? I would. But let's suppose I bring out this new Cadillac, and there's not a thing in the world wrong with it. It's perfect. I drive it for 1,000 miles. I lose $10,000 depreciation on it, and I decide I'll go back and get another. Well, what kind are you going to get? Same kind. Well, what's wrong with this? Nothing. What will that do this and won't? Nothing. It's exactly the same. Why would a man drive a Cadillac around the street, go back and get another of the same kind, and pay extra if there was no need of it? See? Did it cost God and Jesus anything to bring in the Melchizedek priesthood? It cost him his life. See? But that would have been useless if the other was perfect there. Could have brought about that. It said, for the priesthood being changed, there is made a necessity also a change of the law. Now, on that. By the way, before we get on that, I want to give you some scriptures right here where it talked about that being perfect in here. If it were perfect, then there wouldn't have been any need for a change. But over here, in these scriptures, we find this is not perfect. Now, almost everybody in this class has had the book of Galatians that we just got through having. And that is in Galatians chapter 2, verse 21. There we find that Paul said, if you could have been saved through this law, then there would have been no need for another. In Galatians 3:21, he says the same thing. If you could have been saved over here, this one, there was no need of it. Romans 8:3, he tells us what this one couldn't do, this one did do. And he said this one was weak, and then he gives us the reason that it was weak. It was weak because of the flesh. That's what this one's weak about. Men in the flesh sinned. And when you sinned, this one didn't have any blood of Christ in it to cleanse you of your sins. In Galatians 2:11, again in there, you have the same thing. Hebrews 7:19 and Hebrews 10:1 through 4. In Hebrews 10:1 through 4, there it tells you about the blood of bulls and goats. It said, for the blood of bulls and goats can never do what? Take away sin. It can't do it. So this over here had a flaw, and the flaw was, once you sinned, it could never take away sin. Now that makes this over here very, 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 very important, because it has to do with the salvation of man. All right. Now then, the next one, as we go back there, it says, for under this priesthood, the priesthood of Levi, in here, it said that the law came. For the priesthood being changed, there is made of necessity a change also of the law. Now, since the priesthood is going to be changed, you have to change the law. Now, the priesthood and the law are interwoven. The law controlled the priesthood. Let me ask you this. When were the priests to offer a sacrifice, and tell me how you know? Well, just tell me how you know. Whatever the law said. The priest lived under the law and had to obey the law. But now then, as you get down here, tell me how the law functioned without the priesthood. Suppose the priest said, we're quitting. Now then, tell me how to keep the law. No, it was based on the priesthood. They are interwoven. You can't have the law without having the priesthood. You can't have the priesthood without having the law. They're interwoven. The Levitical priesthood was operated and controlled by the law. And what was the job of the Levitical priest? What were they to tell the people that they were to do? They were to take the law and force it upon the people, make the people obey the law. So those two are intertwined, see? All right, now if you're going to change the priesthood over here from Levitical to the Melchizedek, what then, just by a truism, obviously has to happen? You also have to change the law. See, you have to change the law in order to do that. The priesthood of Melchizedek could not function under the priesthood of Levi, because if it does, what does the law under the priesthood of Levi say that you can't do if you're from Melchizedek?
He's not from the right tribe.
Yeah, you can't be. You're not from the right tribe. You can't be a priest. In other words, it cannot function. So the point is, if you change the priesthood, the law also has to change. Now, right there's a very important point when you're talking with somebody who doesn't realize the law is taken out of the way. To my knowledge, everybody understands that the Levitical priesthood has been changed to the Melchizedek priesthood. That is, that it says over and over, Christ is a priest after the order of Melchizedek. Now, whether anybody understands what that means or not, everybody understands Christ is a priest after the order of Melchizedek. See, so they understand that the priesthood has been changed. Well, if you understand the priesthood's been changed, what does this in verse 12 say it has to happen? Then the law has to be changed. So that is a verse that will help you in establishing that fact, because a lot of people understand that the priesthood's been changed, but they don't understand that the law's been changed. Troy?
Just I slipped something here. Aaron, in other words, Aaron must have been from Levi.
Levi was from Aaron.
Oh, Levi?
Yeah, it turns around the other way. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It came out from that era, from down through there. All right. Now then in verse 13, for he of whom these things are said, that's Jesus, belongeth to another tribe. What tribe? The tribe of Judah, from which no man hath given attendance to the altar. So now when you get down then to this, you begin to look at the priesthood of Christ. Why, we find that Christ came from the tribe of Judah. Now over here in number 16, Deuteronomy 10:8, Deuteronomy 21:5, and others, it shows that only the Levites could serve. Nobody else but the Levites could serve in that capacity. But now Jesus came from the tribe of Judah. He came from the tribe that the kings came from. So according to the law of Moses, could Jesus be a priest? No, not if the law of Moses is still in effect. All right, now there's another point I want to make right here that is a sideline. It's not anything that the Hebrew writer is trying to get us to see, but something that's important for us to see really today in the new hermeneutic that is being taught and all of this about the silence of the Scriptures. Do not teach, you can't learn anything from the silence of the Scriptures and all this. Now I want you to note right here in verse 13 what the inspired writer says. It said, for he of whom these things are said, that's Jesus, belongeth to another tribe, that's Judah, from which no man hath given attendance to the altar. Now, how do you know that Jesus couldn't serve as a priest?
Under that system, because he'd have to be from the tribe of Levi.
All right, and how do you know it couldn't be Judah?
Because the law said it had to be Levi.
But how do you know it couldn't be Judah? It says over there nobody's supposed to do it, but suppose that a person from Judah did it.
It doesn't say anything about
it. Doesn't, yeah.
It just says, it never says anything about somebody from Judah doing it. Now his point is, if it doesn't say anything about somebody from Judah, what are you supposed to do? Not do it. See, that's his point that he's making there. All right. Now, in the next verse, it says the same thing. It actually says that. For it is evident that our Lord has sprung out of Judah, as to which tribe Moses spake nothing concerning priest. So, what is his point? If Moses didn't speak anything concerning it, what should you do about it? You shouldn't do it. See? So it shows the power of the silence of the Scriptures.
Okay, so you've got verse 13 and 14 are about the silence of the Scriptures then?
Yeah, right. Yeah, both of them go together. 13 tells you something, and 14 tells you how to understand it. All right, then in verse 14, it said, for it is evident that our Lord sprung out of Judah, as to which tribe Moses spake nothing concerning priest. And what we say is yet more abundantly evident, if after the likeness of Melchizedek there ariseth another priest. Now we're going to see about this. That is, that you can't be a priest if you're from the tribe of Judah. But it will become more evident, this idea of the priesthood will become more evident if you understand that there is a new priest after the order of Melchizedek. Then he said, you begin to see this. It says, that ariseth another priest, who hath been made not after the law of a carnal commandment, but after the power of an endless life. All right, now, down here, the bottom part is where we got this. That Jesus now is made a high priest after the order of Melchizedek, not after the law of a carnal commandment. All right, now, we're talking about the old law, and we're talking about the old law tells you how to become a high priest over here, and it is a carnal commandment. What is a carnal commandment? An earthly, worldly commandment. All right, now you make high priest under the Old Testament according to an earthly, worldly, physical commandment. What is it? Whose kid you are.
Yeah.
See, whose child you are. You must come from the tribe of Levi. And so that's the commandment that tells you how you can become a high priest under the old law. It is of a worldly nature. Now over here, the becoming a priest after the order of Melchizedek is not after a worldly nature. Instead of it coming from the law, it comes from the power, and instead of the law of a carnal commandment, the power of an endless life.
Okay, now does that mean that because Christ was deity and he was eternal? That's
Okay, right. Now what is the power of an endless life? Let me ask you this. Suppose that I tell you I'm going to bring a friend of mine in next week, and he was never born, and he'll never die. Would you feel that he has something that we don't have? It would make an impression on you, wouldn't it? So there is power in that, and that's right. It boils down to deity. See, he's made a high priest because of his deity. Really, is what it's saying. Jen?
I don't understand why we're elevating Melchizedek. He was just a man. I always thought he was something more than that. I don't understand why Christ's priesthood was made like unto his if he was just a person. I always thought he was had some divinity or something.
Is that right? No, I don't think so. If the only thing that is made like that is you have two priests. You have priests of Melchizedek. You have the priesthood of Levi. You have those two priesthood found in the Old Covenant. Now, the Old Testament was based on Levi. Christ is based on Melchizedek. And the point that he is making here when he's telling Melchizedek is that the only thing we know about Melchizedek is he lives. He lived. That's it. He lived. Now this idea, again, without father, without mother, is a statement that people used in those days. They wrote it down in their books to talk about people that you just don't have a record of. It doesn't mean you don't have a father and you never had a mother, that you were never born. It just means there's no record of it. See? And there are other historical examples of that. So what it's showing is what do you know about Melchizedek?
That he lived.
He lived. That's it.
No record of birth or death.
None.
So
He was here. That's what you know. Now, whenever we get into these other things, we're losing the analogy. See, we're losing. In every analogy, in every comparison, there's one thing you compare in there. Unless the author brings out other points. And if he brings out other points, that's fine. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed. And he doesn't tell you. Okay, it just goes ahead, little to big. That's all. The kingdom of heaven is like a sower that went forth to sow. Now, I can get 4 different thoughts out of that, or 5 or 6, but why can't I?
Because it's speaking there.
He then parallels it. The sower is this, the seed is this, and so forth. All right, the only thing we get out of here is he lives, he was a king, and he was a priest, and he was superior to the father of the Jewish nation. That's all we get.
Really, all you're doing is just comparing the priesthood under the law of Moses with this particular priesthood.
That's all.
Which Christ is the same as.
That's right. Now, and we're going to go ahead and see these over here die, these over here are inferior. Melchizedek was superior. Christ is made after this.
I was just going to say, it's the same kind of thing that we have to keep in mind, that Jesus being priest and king at the same time they had no trouble, the Hebrew people had no trouble understanding him being a king because he was from the tribe of Judah.
Mm-hmm.
What they had problems with was him being a priest.
Mm-hmm.
And so the precedent that was set by Melchizedek,
Mm-hmm.
which they accepted full
Mhm.
well,
Mm-hmm.
then they could accept Christ being a priest too if it was after the same fashion.
Right. Because, see, you could have a king and a priest under the same guy before the law. But when the law came in, then for that period of time. But now, what was the law for? See, that's what we always have to remember. It was just to hold the Jews under control. See, that's what it was for. It wasn't to save people and set all this precedent and so forth. Mm-hmm.
There's one other feature about this, and because he's talking to Jews in this letter.
Right.
They're familiar with the Old Testament,
Mm-hmm.
and they can't deny the fact that Melchizedek is mentioned, but
Mhm.
his information is so sparse,
Mm-hmm.
they really can't bring up any argument against this.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And so they would be at a loss in order to say, well, who is this Melchizedek? We don't really know too much
Mhm.
about him like they would
Mhm.
of Moses
Mhm.
or of Abraham that
Mhm.
they were so fond of referring back to.
Mhm.
But here, when Abraham pays tithes to him and Melchizedek blesses Abraham,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what the scriptures say, very
Yeah.
briefly, to the
Mhm.
point, and that's it.
That's all.
What else what argument can a Jew bring up against?
That's all. That's it. That's the important thing. In the Old Covenant, Abraham's coming back. The whole story's about Abraham on his way back. Bing! The guy's in the middle of the road. That's all you know. He blesses him. He takes a tenth. He's a king of Salem. He's a priest of God Most High. He goes home. That's it. He's superior to Abraham. Mm-hmm.
It seems to me that's part of the typology or whatever you want to say.
That's what it is.
He has no beginning or end, just like Jesus has no beginning or end.
Yeah. That's right. It's
Except that Christ is
typology.
literal.
See, it is the type.
Right.
Right. So that's what I say. See, God doesn't let us know who it was. The history doesn't tell us who it was. The beginning doesn't tell us when he dies. It just tells us he was there. And now then, there's your type. See that you have. Okay. Now then, in verse 17, for it is written, witnessed of him, thou art a priest forever after the order of Melchizedek. Now, where's that written?
Psalm.
In the book of Psalms. Did the Jews always have that? And did they understand that this is talking about the Messiah? It's a messianic psalm? Surely they did. Now, don't ask me why they didn't realize some of these things. See, I don't know. It looks like that when they read that in the Psalms, they would say, well, he's not going to be a priest after the order of Levi. But I don't suppose they did. The thing that bugs me is how many blind spots I have in my eyes as I read things that are just evident and plain down there. And of course, this has happened to me many, many times. You know, I've preached for years and somebody said that verse doesn't say that. It does too, and I look at it and it doesn't say what I thought it said. We do have blind spots, and I'm sure that this was one of them. But there couldn't be anything more evident, more plainly taught in the Old Testament Jewish scriptures than that the Messiah would be a high priest after the order of Melchizedek. See? And so he keeps bringing it out. All right, verse 18. For there is a disannulling of a foregoing commandment because of its weakness and unprofitableness, for the law made nothing perfect. So there again, we've talked about that in Galatians, and I put the scriptures up there again tonight. The law made nothing perfect. Now, when a man sins and he's living under the law, what could he do to get those sins eradicated without the blood of Christ? See, he couldn't. He had to offer the blood of bulls and goats. That would roll it forward on a year-to-year basis, but it took the blood of Christ. So once you sin, the old law then was powerless in making you perfect or completely washing your sins away. So the law made nothing perfect. So what has happened is there is a disannulling of the foregoing commandment because of its weakness and unprofitableness. So now the Old Covenant, the Old Testament law over here, this law has been disannulled. It's been taken out of the way because of its weakness and its unprofitableness. Now, let's go back and ask ourselves one more time. Was the law good or bad?
Good.
Good.
Romans 7:12, the law is good and holy and righteous. You see, the law is a good law. But it was weak. Why was it weak and unprofitable?
Because of men.
Because it dealt with us humans. And we sinned. Now, suppose that a man back there had kept the law. What kind of person would they have been? Perfect. Just like Jesus Christ. He kept the law. See, it would have made them perfect. The law was good. But the law was weak because man, through his fleshly life, is weak and sinned, and therefore it didn't have the power to forgive sins. So it's taken out of the way. That's the point that he's making here. And a bringing in, therefore, upon a better hope. Now, the word better is an interesting word in the book of Hebrews. What's the book of Hebrews about? What are we comparing? The old with the new. The old is good, but the new is what? Better. It's always this way. The Levitical priesthood was good, but Melchizedek priesthood is better. See? And so everything is better over here. So now then, we also have a better hope. See? Over here. A better hope. Let's look at this hope that a Jew had and the hope that we have. Now over here, under the old law, did a Jew have any hope of being saved? They did, didn't they? And their hope was based upon blood, was it not? And what kind of blood? Bulls and goats. It was based upon that. And did they have any legitimate right to have any hope? Well, yes, they did have a legitimate right to have the hope. God told them, if you'll do this, you'll be saved. And so they did have a legitimate hope. Now then, over here, though, we have a hope over here, and our hope over here is better than that hope over there. And why is it better?
Based on the blood of Christ.
Over here, it's also based on blood, but over here, it's the blood of Jesus Christ. It's the Son of God. Over here, had I lived over there, and I sinned and offered the blood of bulls and goats, what would have I had to wait on and depend on and hope for? Christ to come. Had he not come, then I wouldn't have been saved. Over here, what do I have to wait for? I commit a sin tonight. I go to my God and ask him to forgive me. What do I have to hope? What do I have to wait for? After I committed my sin, I prayed to God. How much hope can I have I'm going to be saved? And you say, Lord, you sinned today? Yeah, I sinned today. You hope to go to heaven? Yes, I hope to go to heaven. I know I'm going to be there. Well, why can you have that hope? See? Yeah.
That came to today, this word, come before him with boldness.
Yes.
That's stated in Hebrews someplace.
Yeah, back in chapter 4, see, it's stated in there. See, go for him for it. You know what you're going to get.
Some other books states boldness.
Yeah.
Some other place there.
Right. So that's the whole point. See, what you've got in Christ is better than what you had back there. It's not that the old was not good. This is better. All right, 20. And inasmuch, now here's your next point, and inasmuch as it is not without the taking of an oath, for they indeed, that's the Old Testament priest, have been made priest without an oath, but he, Jesus, with an oath, by him that hath said, the Lord swear and will not repent himself, thou art a priest forever. So now then, another reason that it is superior is because back there, they were made a priest without an oath. What made you a priest? If you're under the old covenant, when did you become a priest? When born in the right family, when your dad died. See? Then you became a priest. What makes you a priest over here? An oath of God. See? God gave. Now, I've got down here, when God swore with an oath, he didn't do that on all occasions, by the way. What really is the difference in the chances of God doing something if he just promises it, or if he swears with an oath?
No difference.
Absolutely no difference. If he promises, it will be done. But why was it that he said that he swore with an oath to Abraham back in chapter 6? For more assurance. To let you know, more assurance. All right, when God wanted to really show the firmness and unchangeableness, it'll never be changed, he swore with an oath. So he swore with an oath then, And so the Melchizedek priesthood of Christ comes in with this oath. 22. By so much also hath Jesus become the surety of there's that word again, better covenant. Now then, we're getting into a covenant, into this agreement, into the law that is given, that we have now. And so, since now he is the he is the high priest of this new covenant, it says he also is the surety. Now, a surety, all that means is a guarantor. If I become your surety on a loan, what happens?
You have to pay it if I default.
I've guaranteed the banker that I will pay a loan if you default. Now, really, when you get down to it again, if God gives a promise, do you need a surety? No, but He gives it. That there is Jesus Christ is the one that guarantees it, and He brings in a better covenant. Now we're going to talk about this covenant in the next chapter, and we'll see why it is better. But now he goes on with this then. And it says, and they, the Levitical priest, indeed have been made priests many in number, because that by death they are hindered from continuing. But he, because he abideth forever, hath his priesthood unchangeable. So now, here we find this, that another difference between the old and the new is that there were many high priests back here. History tells us that there were 81. And why were there 81 high priests?
Death.
Because 80 of them died. See, I mean, it's death. But over here, that's what you see is unchangeable. He liveth, he ever liveth, he abideth forever, and to save to the uttermost. That's the point that we got here. He doesn't change. See? Now, when you change priesthoods over here, there is a well, would one high priest be better than another high priest? Well, certainly they would. They were just human beings. See, they would change. One would be better, one would be worse. One would keep their word, one wouldn't keep their word. What did the first high priest do that was a rather shameful thing? Before he ever, right when Moses was up on Mount Sinai, Aaron made a golden calf. Did he have weaknesses? You see back there? Certainly they did. And so back here, you had to put up with human beings. There wasn't that absolute surety. If they guarantee you something, they might die. I'd like to borrow $100,000 off of each one of you tonight. And I promise you, my kids will pay you back when I die. Anybody want to loan me that? You'd say, no, Lowell, maybe we trust you, but how do we know what your kids are going to do or their kids are going? There's changeableness, right? Suppose that you trusted me. You said, your word is as good as gold. I say, give me $100,000 and I am never going to die. Suppose I had that assurance. I will never die. Now, does that give you any assurance that you'll get your money back? See? And so up here, Jesus Christ is a high priest that will never, ever change. This then enables him in verse 25, wherefore also he is able to save to the uttermost them that draw near unto God through him, seeing he ever liveth to make intercessions for them. So Christ will never die. He has his blood there. He sheds it. And how long will Jesus make intercession for people?
Forever.
Forever. See? Never stop. Now then, in verse 26 then, here we're going to see another comparison of him, and kind of sums it up. For such a high priest became us. Now that word became us means is suitable. He is one that is suitable to fulfill our needs. And what are our needs?
Tremendous.
To be saved. That's right, they're tremendous. See, to be saved. Now he's a suitable high priest. He can do it. It said, for such a high priest became us, holy, guileless, undefiled, separated from sinners, and made higher than the heavens, who needeth not daily, like those high priests, to offer up sacrifices, first for their own sins, and then for the sins of the people. For this he did once for all, when he offered up himself. So now, as we stop here, we see, what is he? Well, he is holy. The idea there in that word is reverential. He has the proper attitude toward God. Guileless means without malice, without ill will. He doesn't have any ill will toward anybody. Undefiled means that he himself is without any impurities, without any spot or blemish. Separated from sinners. He did not become a sinner when he was here on earth, and he is now separated at the right hand of God. He's not living among sinners. He is higher than the heavens. He does not have to offer daily self-sacrifice. That is, sacrifice for himself because he is sin. But he has offered one sacrifice for all people. He has no infirmities. He has no weaknesses to get him to sin. He has no physical weaknesses to cause him to die like the others do. He holds office by an oath, not by inheritance of some kind. He is a son of God, and he is perfected evermore. See? So he goes ahead then in verse 28 to add those others in there. For the law appointeth men high priest having infirmity. They're weak. They die. They're sinners. Look at Aaron. But the word of the oath, which was after the law, appointeth the Son perfected forever. So that's what he is. Now then over there, neither Aaron or Levi or any of the other high priests had a single one of those things. You see, that they could say. That here it is, I have these, and so you can depend on me. So the high priesthood of Jesus then is very great. Now, let's go right on in chapter 8 because it continues on. It says, now in the things which we are saying, the chief point is this. So here is where he's coming to this conclusion. That's why I want to continue on with it right now. Now the chief point, the major thing I want you to see, and everything that I've said that is up there in all of this, the priesthood of Melchizedek, of Jesus having all of this, here it is. Here's the chief point now. It's this right here. And that is that we have such a high priest who sat down at the right hand of the throne of majesty in the heavens, a minister to the sanctuary of the true tabernacle, which the Lord pitched, not man. Now, there is where he said. The chief point is, our high priest sat down on the right hand of the majesty in the heavens. He's sitting there beside God right now at God's right hand, making intercessions for us. Which kind of high priest would you rather have? One that if you needed to talk with him, that you had to go over and knock on his tent and get him out of bed and ask him if you could talk with him? Or have a high priest that's sitting at the right hand of God, where you can go to him day and night? See? You see the difference that he's making in here? All right, so he's sitting down right there. Now then, it said, not only that, but he is in the true tabernacle, which the Lord pitched, not man. Now, that is an interesting thing there. That he is a minister of the sanctuary of the true tabernacle, which the Lord pitched, not man. All right, now, when it says true, it means that he's in the true tabernacle right now. Now, true doesn't mean that this is false. True is compared to type. This over here was the type. If I make a copy of something, you say, Lowell, I want a copy of this chart. Well, I give it to you, you take it somewhere, and is that the true chart I ran off today, the one you've got? Or is it a copy? See, it is a copy. All right, so it's true in comparison to the type. Now we're going to see, right here in chapter 8, it's called a copy in 8.5, shadow 8.5, figure 9.9, copies 9.23, not heavenly 9.23, a pattern 9.24, a shadow in 10.1. Now if I hold this thing up here, what do you see? You see a shadow. If I hold this up here, you see another shadow. Now that shadow gives you an idea of the true thing that's up here, doesn't it? Does that mean that the shadow's false? No, the shadow is a real shadow, but it's without substance. This is what has substance. All right? Now, Jesus is in the tabernacle that is true and real and has substance. The Old Testament tabernacle that was made out of wood and material things was merely a type. See, that's all that is getting at right now. Now, what I see in this thing is this, that as you look at that tabernacle they had, it had two rooms. And this out here was the holy place, and this back here was the most holy place. And who is it that could come back here? Only the high priest, one time a year. See? Now, who could come in here? The priest. You had to be a priest in order to come in here. All right, so now they had all of these things and had all of the things that you had to do this. Now, this right in here is a type. It is a shadow. Now, what is the real tabernacle? Well, so I understand the real tabernacle. Here we take the earth right in here, and on the earth, it's divided into the saved and the unsaved. As you begin to look at the saved people, are they called a temple of God in 1 Corinthians 12, or 1 Corinthians 3 and 1 Corinthians 6? And we're built up into the temple of God in Ephesians 2:22. And 1 Peter 2:4 says, you are what? You are all living stones built up into a living building, you see, into a tabernacle. All right, now what the church is right here, the church down here is this right here. See, that's where it is. And by the way, if you want to go into this area over here, what's the only door into it? Have to go through this way, see? All right, now Jesus now is up here into the heavens. So I guess if you want to draw it the way we would look at it, it would be something like this. That down here is the holy place, and up here is where the most holy place is. Up here is where Jesus is. This is where the high priest is. By the way, who met the high priest back over here? God. And Jesus now is up here with God. So he now has passed into this realm, and this over here is the real thing. This is what it really looks like. This is what's going on tonight. This back over here was just a figure to give us an idea, you see, of what it was all about. All right, there now is where we will close. But look at verse 3. What did he do when he went in there? For every high priest is appointed to offer gifts and sacrifices. So when Jesus went into the most holy place, what did he take with him? He took his blood, he took the sacrifice to offer it unto God. Okay, class dismissed.